Welcome. Good Yantiv. Shana Tova. Shabbat Shalom. We are here for Kol Nidre, our holiest night of the year, the beginning of the fast day of Yom Kippur, the end of our days of awe. This really difficult time for the Jewish people. It was just this last week that we marked the anniversary of October 7th. That was a heart-wrenching day for a lot of us, and just to relive that Black Sabbath and everything that's happened since, anti-Semitism, the war, continued attacks in Israel. So what we're doing tonight partly is praying for compassion, for divine compassion to pour into that situation for ourselves and for everybody there. We're praying for hope in this country too, just a month from elections. Maybe of all years, I've been thinking the most about this Kol Nidre, Jews gathering around the world in all the different communities everywhere, gathering around and doing the same thing, processing everything that happened in the last year, and also thinking about their own families, their past, their present, their future, trying to find hope. And even as we remain in all the midst of these struggles, of everything happening, trying to return to that place of relationship with the Holy One of Israel, our rock and consoler through the generations, in prayer and in supplication, which is what this night is all about. Tonight is also Shabbat, but we do very little of Shabbat, just a few prayers. Some we add, some we take out, because Yom Kippur is known as Shabbat Shabbaton, the Sabbath of all Sabbaths. So we begin with the only night of the year where we wear a talit. If you're not wearing your talit yet, we can put it on right now. We turn to page 200. Erev Tov. Gmar Tov. Can you hear me in the back? This past July, my family was in Montpellier, a small, charming town in the south of France. We heard there was a jazz festival happening, and we found out that that evening, the group playing was called the Avishai Cohen Quartet. We thought, this sounds good, an Israeli group. Not important, but there were no more tickets online, so we ended up having to go there and line up to get tickets that were left over for those who were coming late. So we got a little bit late, and they were in the middle of their first piece, and it was just beautiful. And then Avishai Cohen, started to talk to the audience. A few hundred people in this beautiful outdoor area in this medieval town, open to the sky. And he said that he had written the composition that they were about to play. In fact, all the compositions they were about to play, November 2023. And in fact, they'd written the whole album just in that time frame, and he would play it all for us at night. And we'd be among the first to hear it, he said with a little bit of nervousness. And so then they began to play this beautiful set of jazz that really expressed for me what the Jewish people have been going through for the past 12 months. And so as I was listening in this beautiful outdoor area to this experimental jazz from the hearts of 4 Israelis on that summer night, suddenly I realized that I had unprocessed feelings from the year before. Feelings of shock, feelings of pain, of disbelief, of the world changing in a few days for the worse, a fear for the future of our Jewish homeland, for its very existence, a vulnerability for us here in the diaspora, and just witnessing a traumatic event that we never thought would happen to the Jewish people in our lifetimes again. A loss of the sense of security that we took for granted, our sense of Israel's security, that something that could never happen in the Jewish homeland, created to protect the Jews. The Israelis thought the army and the country knew how to care for them, how to be there for them. We watched that whole day as thousands of terrorists rampaged through the country, security forces nowhere to be seen. Just a most frightening and shaking, heartbreaking experience. And then to actually hear in the weeks afterwards and days what actually happened on that day only made it worse. Unmentionable. I remember standing in this room on that last day of the holiday, Simchat Torah morning, just as we were beginning to get information about it. At the beginning, it was talking about hundreds of victims, then became more and more and what they did. And even before that, I remember talking that morning to my brother-in-law, who was an ex-Israeli Air Force pilot. And he said they took hostages, including women, back to Gaza. You know what that means. Just a declaration of complete war in the most barbaric expression. The more you heard, the worse you realized it was. And then even before the Gaza war, the rise in anti-Semitism globally, celebration in some campuses and even from some university professors. And here in America, in the weeks that followed, seeing Israelis come as refugees to this country, filling day schools all around the country. And in this congregation, like many other synagogues, there were Israeli family members of congregants who came to services looking like total messes, shocked, traumatized. And in Israel, everybody watching TV 24/7, reports of impromptu civilian patrols in all Israeli cities, Israelis putting fridges in front of their doors just to make sure nobody could come in. And here, in our neighborhood, I was afraid in those days to walk around with the kippah on my head. I remember one day walking around, realizing I'd forgotten my hat, holding my son's hand and thinking, well, what do I do if I'm attacked? Send my son running that way to climb over the fence and I'll deal with whatever happens. And over the past year, just to witness in America where Jews are actually hated. We always knew there was anti-Semitism, a certain amount of it, but in America where Jews are hated and Israel is despised. Inconceivable. And nobody had any feeling for what we were going through, the extent of it. Nobody gave us comfort or understanding for what we were facing. And I heard from so many people losing friends, hearing complete silence from cherished neighbors. And once in a while, we'd hear a little bit about some unexpected support, and we took that as a token. Yes, there is hope. Seeing a complete distortion of truth. So a colleague of my wife, Rachel, who's a psychotherapist, asked her, is there really a separate line at Tel Aviv airport for white people? As if Israel was literally a white supremacist state. Of course, in Israel, there are more people of color than there are white people. And there are more denominations and faiths in probably almost any country in the world. There are more denominations of Christianity in Israel than any other country in the world. And people we knew, felt close friends with, allies, suddenly saw us as enemies. I heard from so many rabbinic colleagues of mine who spent decades marching for social justice issues, for everyone else's causes, lending their voice, their energy, their resources, And now they lamented, well, where are my allies? Silence. The silence of people that they worked with for decades. And not just silence, but turned against them. A rabbi in my extended family, who's one of the most prominent voices in social justice issues and devoted so many years to it, at the forefront of many movements, and who wrote a song that's used in almost every single progressive Jewish rally. He wrote in a post online, he said he was going to stop devoting so much time to social justice issues. Now what needs to happen is helping Jews connect to their identity. And he also forbid Jewish Voices for Peace and other similar anti-Zionist groups from using his song. And I experienced cherished colleagues from other religions who suddenly stopped talking to me, even before the Gaza war began. When a family friend in Canada said to my parents, a family friend who sometimes organizes a Zoom viewing tent so they can be part of our services here, that the life of Jews in North America, will it ever be the same? And I heard that, I thought, nah, it cannot be. But then I've started to wonder. And saw what happened on campuses, people given the highest level of education, the brightest minds in the country, openly espousing anti-Semitism, genocide of Israel, not even a doubt or a thought. Israel was simply unworthy of any empathy or feeling as if it had committed October 7th. And President Biden was being attacked for being a supporter of Israel and a Zionist. So I was at this concert in the middle of the summer in the south of France, and all of this came out. And where, at some level, this is where it all came out for me in my being. So Avishai Cohen, in his first break between the songs, he started to nervously admit to the crowd that they were Israeli. And he said, this music came out after seeing our people being butchered, his words. And at first the music was so sad and dreamy. I remember that the drum bass was the only percussion. It just go boom, boom, boom. And the music was dreamy, and just like a simple heartbeat. Sad, soulful music. I just thought here was a kind man searching for meaning amidst terrible pain and how to understand this fissure. And I could see that he was speaking with worry. As someone interrupt him and start heckling him, as happened so many times with anti-Israel rhetoric after he admitted he was Israeli. It's happened to so many Israelis and just Jews around the world. Jewish artists, academics, writers, therapies who've been effectively blacklisted. They cannot get published. They're banned from events. Colleagues refuse to sit at conferences with them. Last year, my wife Rachel told me that there had been a post in a group for anti-racist Chicago-based therapists from an admin who forbid Zionist therapists from being part of it, and then posted a list of Zionist therapists to say nobody to refer them to. Made the news. Avishai Cohen said, so many people just see the world as black and white, but how about some complexity? How about some complexity? He said, we live in a democracy, and I've been busy protesting the current government every week for a year. He said, I have a lot to say, but this is not the time to do it. So he let the music do the talking. And it was so sad to witness every one of them putting their heart into it. This dreamy jazz was just developing and building, and all these melodies and beautiful moments. And I was expressing how I was feeling, and I was wondering, well, how many Jews are there in the audience? And I was also worried that someone would say something, or something was going to happen on that night. And at a certain moment, suddenly there were some rescue workers who came because someone had had a health scare and was taking away in an ambulance, and I couldn't see anything, but I was worried there was something happening. And I later heard from my 6-year-old, Adiv. He said that when the artist admitted that he was Israeli, he was worried that someone was going to do an attack with a gun. And now here we are, people around the world on Kol Nidre night, 1 year since October 7th, and we're still trying to process, how did this ever happen, to understand? What is the meaning? What is it all about? Gathered in synagogues in this nation, where every single one that can afford it has armed guards and security. What we're here to do is we are commanded to do every single Yom Kippur, to begin a day of self-introspection and of reflection. What is our lives? Will we ever have a situation for Jews in America and around the world where they'll feel safe and not need those armed guards? Will we ever go back to where we were? Heard from the Israeli commentator Yossi Klein Halevi, who speaks, and now we're in the post-Holocaust era. So the post-Holocaust era, till a year ago, was the era of the realization of all of our dreams, a Jewish homeland, a safe and flourishing, welcoming community here in the diaspora. It's too early to tell, he said, what this new era is about. And so at the concert, this dreamy music, pensive and moving, and I thought, this is what a secular Israeli jazzist from Tel Aviv, how he pours out his heart, as if he was walking on the beach there, trying to convey, facing his feelings. And what to do with my feelings, I thought, on that night. And then we had this amazing experience. There were these birds, these ravens, that were just circling above the outdoor concert. In a certain moment, they started to join in the music. And they were squeaking perfectly in time with the drum beat, with all the sound. It was adding to the eeriness of the music, the sun setting and the medieval setting and the ravens, as if they were talking to us. And it brought smiles to all the artists. They kept looking up and pointing up. And it felt as if it was all of nature, the very heartbeat of life. That God was there understanding and seeing us, even if our fellows do not. God was talking to us, telling us we are not alone. We are not alone. These are the questions we ask, the prayers we have, sitting on Kol Nidre night. This is our place of communion with the Holy One of Israel. There's a story in the Tanakh, the Bible, of the ravens bringing food to Eliyahu the prophet, when there's a drought and a famine, and he's hiding in a cave in the desert, afraid for his life. What's the symbolism of ravens? Well, a raven is the first bird that Noah sends out after the rain stopped from the ark, before the dove. And the Midrash says that at first Noah looked at the raven and spoke disparagingly about it. You're not even edible, can't even give you as a burnt offering. But God rebuked him for insulting the animal. And the Jerusalem Talmud, in Masechet Pesachim 113b, lists the raven as one of only 3 species that gets along with those of its same species. Whereas human beings and most creatures, we keep competing with our own kind. Ravens exhibit love and concern for one another. They know how to live in harmony. So all of us are in that place in some way, wherever we are, whatever we think. We're like Elijah fleeing to the cave. We need that divine reassurance. We'd like that harmony. Praying for the ravens to come and bring us that food that we need, to pray for us and show us that God is there. And the ravens are also a symbol of faith. In the end, we will be sustained. God will sustain. And we each have our very individual search for what that faith looks like. There's a saying in rabbinical school, the rabbis say to those who come to us with questions of belief, tell me the God you don't believe in, there's a good chance I don't believe in him either. Because we're all searching. And this is who we are, searching and looking for meaning, something to hold on to. Because faith in Judaism is not dogmatic, but it's tender and true. The God who works in his history hasn't just left us alone, but God is with us in history. We have a purpose. It will be illuminated. But says the Talmud, the ravens also came to teach Elijah a message. He himself had decreed a drought as a prophet because he had believed that all of Israel were sinners and idolaters. But they were coming to tell him that it wasn't completely true. There were some in the kingdom of Israel who were not sinners, who had good qualities, who were worthy individuals. It was more complex than he believed. At the end of the concert, they got one of the loudest standing ovations I've ever heard. And the French, who are usually so reserved and restrained, were on their feet, just clapping and clapping and clapping. And this band, who gave of their innermost soul, they looked surprised and very moved. And they kept saying, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." It was a reminder that we're not alone. And that we have friends, even if their voices are not as loud as we hope they can be. We have a history, a story that bears witness to resilience, to strength, and many miracles. And we have friends. We have a God. We are here tonight to process together, as we Jews have always done, from our first challenges in Egypt to our first deliverance and revelation and new beginnings in Mount Sinai to our expulsions. From so many countries we can attest we have been brought on to our next stage. We have a God. So over the summer, I was also in Amsterdam, and I went to the Resistance Museum in Amsterdam. I don't know how many of you have been there. The concierge of the hotel said, "This is a great museum for Jewish families." It's about the resistance against the Nazis. I'm not sure how great it was for Jewish families, but it was pretty moving and powerful, but difficult. And in the children's part, there was an exhibit that brought me to tears. As I watched my own children learn about this young girl and the whole recreation of the apartment she lived in, the life she had, and reading letters and hearing statements, and saw my children learn for the very first time what really happened to Jews during the Second World War. This girl who was a friend of Anne Frank, who also hid, and she was discovered by the Nazis, and she was sent also to Auschwitz. So I watched my daughter, Shava, for the first time learn about Auschwitz, about the trains. So I was panicked, and I just wanted to take her out. I came in, I said, "Shava, we have to go." And she looked at me and she said, "No, Abba, I want to hear about this." We are all searching for meaning. We're all searching for something to hold on to believe in, to give our own lives meaning. Something that affirms that we are not alone, this year and every year. And the girl who that exhibit was about survived Auschwitz and is still alive today. I thought even an Israeli group of secular musicians in downtown Montpellier and in this open-air, beautiful space found people who cared about them. That our story was somehow important to them and gave them something for their lives. It raised them up to see how deep the human heart is and how powerful our longing to find wholeness and truth. And how moved we all are by life and love and sadness, how it opens our minds and hearts to reveal humanity's most profound aspirations, to cherish its greatest gifts, to make sense with our creativity of the incomprehensible, to walk our steps of life through our years with questions about the cosmos, about all of it, questions and yearnings, to feel the beating heart of the universe and bear witness to the terrifying power of both good and evil in this world, to share the light amidst the cracks in our own soul, to come together as we do every Yom Kippur, to find peace, to find camaraderie, to find our God, to sing our song to the world. Good Yontiv, Erev Tov.